Now, Forspoken is a game that's had a lot of buzz over the past year, both positive and negative, but the game is finally on its way out at long last after a couple of delays and a lot of, like I said, marketing buzz, both positive and negative. And I'm here today as somebody who was very kindly gifted the game by Square Enix to perform a review for you guys and let you guys know whether Frey's journey through Aether is one that you would like to take a journey through as well, or whether you kind of just want to leave it in the dust. So if you're interested in all of that and more, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Now, before we continue, I do think it's important to note that while the copy of the game was gifted to me early in order to perform this review for you, this is not a paid stream or anything, so all thoughts about Forspoken here are my own. They are not representative of anybody else's, and I do think that because this game has had a bit of a rough ride with its demo and stuff like that, I feel that this is a game that a lot of gamers have kind of already made their mind up about, when I don't feel that that's necessarily a fair judgment to make. I've seen a lot of comments about it's terrible, it's like this, that, and the other end. I can turn around and quite happily say to you right at the start of this video, this game is not terrible. There is a lot of positive things about it that I am going to go through in this video. It's definitely not a perfect game by any means, and I will definitely go over its shortcomings as well, but honestly, I could release an entire video essay as to what I feel is a lot of hypocrisy amongst kind of the gaming communities and people kind of making snap judgments based on only part of a larger picture. But then again, we do live on the internet these days, and you know, that's something you see in every culture these days, not just gamer culture. So for those of you who haven't seen Forspoken before, Forspoken is an action RPG in which you take the role of Frey Holland, who is a New Yorker who has been teleported to this mystical land known as Aether. So it's very much following that kind of girl out of time, isekai trope that we have seen in quite a few other more contemporary productions in recent years, certainly if you're an anime fan. And in order for Frey to find her way back home, she has to use magical abilities that are granted to her by the magical cuff that she wears in order to traverse the open world and fight the Tanters, who are sort of powerful women that take control of the elements. And Forspoken, as you can see through the gameplay footage I'm showing here, is stunning to look at. It's gorgeous. Certainly, I mean, first things first, make sure if you're playing this on PS5, you're playing this in sort of performance mode more than anything like that. You want that high frame rate. It makes a huge difference when you're playing this game. I tried it both ways, and I remember when I first went to the Forspoken pre-release event, it was using kind of ray tracing and stuff, and I don't care what anybody says, give me 60 frames per second over that higher resolution. It just makes for a smoother gameplay experience. But Forspoken takes the Luminous engine, which was first kind of used in Final Fantasy 15, and develops it to be used specifically for the PS5 and high-end PC rigs. More on that later. And you'll go through this open world to try and find your way back home. Now, like I said, the game is stunning. Like, there was very, few times where I wasn't looking at the open world or the character models and thinking, my goodness, this is a game that is designed for a high-end rig. And when it comes to the PC version, it's definitely designed for a high-end rig, to the point where I wonder how high-end it has to be. Now, my computer is no slouch. I have a 3070 GTX graphics card. I have a Ryzen 9 5600X processor. And yet somehow, I'm still only able to hit the recommended specific or specs for Forspoken. When I look at the PS5 version, I think, there's no way that my PS5 has the same specs that my PC does. So I do think that for players that are looking to play it on PC, because the recommended specs require a minimum of a 3070 GPU, you kind of wonder where the optimization has gone there. So if you have both, I would just get the PS5 version if you're going to get this game. Because while I'm all for games moving forward with the times, this seems like a lot when you consider the PS5 as an alternate option. Before we continue, a quick reminder to check out all of my social media links in the description box below, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord, and Patreon. If you want to join the conversation on Forspoken or Final Fantasy or any of the other games that we play, then definitely come and find us over on Discord, all in the link in the description box below, as well as Twitch, where you can find me streaming 5 days a week. And then over on Patreon, I do always shout out one of my patrons every time I release a video, as well as having them all in the credits at the end, so that I can show my appreciation to everyone who supports this channel individually. And today that person is going to be DJ Laws, who is one of my Ultimate tier patrons and therefore has a hand-drawn title card of VV as everyone chooses their own character for their title card. So a massive thank you goes out to you for your support for the longest time now. It really does mean a great deal. And if you're interested in getting a title card made for you by me, as well as plenty of other benefits, then perhaps you'd like to consider clicking on the Patreon link in the description box below as well. So to go into what I've played of the game, I have finished the game's main story. I have done a fair few of the side quests, and I've done quite a few just exploring and just leveling up, things like that. Running around doing the things that Frey does, and therefore I can make comment on the narrative and kind of the pacing of the game. So I think that the narrative is honestly a bit cliche, but in a Devil May Cry kind of way, where it's a bit cliche and cheesy, but you kind of love it for it. The girl out of time is a trope that gets played into it, and there are times where you'll have conversations between Frey and Cuff where Frey will make some meta sort of comment about how things would play out. One that sticks in my head is she goes, oh, if this was a horror film, this would be where stuff goes to heck. Although she doesn't actually say that. She swears a lot, like a lot. Every other sentence. And I'm no prude, but my god, girl, calm down. But these meta kind of like, oh, if this were a horror film. I honestly think that that trope itself is the tired trope. It's almost less tropey to just let the thing happen rather than comment on how it would happen if this were a different situation. And I do actually think the performances in this game are really good. Frey in particular and Cuff are both standout performances in their own way, although I do think that the swearing does cheapen Frey quite badly. Because like I said, I'm no prude with it, but it's hard to not notice quite how frequently F-bombs and S-bombs are littered throughout this game. And if this is what like the idea of kind of the New Yorker is, then it definitely made me roll my eyes a few times. It was ultimately though the supporting cast I found that I really enjoyed when it came to Forspoken, particularly Monica Barbara's performance as Auden Keene, who is kind of the accidental best friend troop for the girl out of time, and I honestly found her bizarrely sensible and having a really matter-of-fact attitude that I really enjoyed, as well as Janina Gavankar as Tanta Sila, who is one of the primary antagonists of the game, and a very kind of like, you know, heavy approach to it, which fit the character really well. I did actually enjoy the voice casting quite a lot in this game. It's just the swearing that bothered me. So let's talk about the actual gameplay and the pacing itself. So first thing I want to point out here is that the demo did no favors for showcasing the game. After I went to the pre-release event and then the demo came out shortly after, I went to the demo after seeing how much sort of vitriol was aimed at this demo. I was like, it can't be that bad. I went and played it, and it shows you nothing of the game. It removes all of the story beats in favor of a pretty anemic look at the way the game plays, and the combat does actually feel really good once you have all of the pieces together for it. But if you're kind of lumped in with everything all at once, it's kind of like a bit overwhelming. Now, there is a sluggishness to it in some aspects, like the way that you switch spells, switch sort of elements, things like that. Is you hold a button, it slows down time, you use a wheel to pick the spell, and then you can, you know, press the same button you would for any spell, like L1 or R1, to be able, or L2 or R2, to be able to cast those spells. It would have been nice to have seen kind of button combinations play into things a little more, as opposed to kind of pressing R2 and L2 a lot, and then selecting a spell from a menu to then press L2 and R2 a lot. But once you have all of the pieces together, traversal feels really good because of the fact that you're able to run at such sort of great speeds, and the magic parkour element of it is really fun. The combat, the boss fights are actually very good as well for the most part. At no point did I really feel like I was struggling with the game, and I played the game on its default setting. Sort of, there's an easy as a hard, there's different ways in which you can augment the difficulty if you so choose. But as I sort of was playing the game, and then like I said, I went back and played the demo, the fire abilities, which are the melee abilities in the game, are almost certainly the weakest to play abilities in the game, and the fact that those were the ones that were showcased, I think, is a crying shame. A quick side note, the music for this game is phenomenal. One of the composers for Forspoken is the same composer as God of War Ragnarok's, which is Bear McCreary, and you can absolutely tell when you're listening to the likes of Frey's theme or the main theme of the game. It's beautiful music. Speaking of, like, the enemies and not having too much difficulty with the game itself, I will say that the thing I had the most difficulty with was probably the camera. It's an absolute pain in the backside in enclosed spaces, which Forspoken seems to have this weird tendency to throw at you pretty frequently, which is especially weird when you consider that the scope of Frey's movement abilities are meant to be used in larger spaces, you know, parkour and running over rooftops and things like that. So while you're locked in these small corridors, you'd find that Frey moves almost too fast, and there are a number of times where I would run up a wall when I didn't mean to, and then try and get off the wall to then run off the opposite wall because Frey's movement abilities are too wide to fit into these enclosed spaces. So when you go into them, you kind of have to slow down, and that definitely impacted the momentum of the game. And while you're locked onto larger enemies, the camera really does fight with you amongst the crazy particle effects, albeit extremely pretty particle effects, that just bounce around all over the place. So sometimes it can be a little bit challenging to actually see what you're doing. The story in the game, like as I say, I finished the main story, and I will say that I was a little bit disappointed with the fact that when I went on the website and the interviews with the producers and stuff like that, it was said that the main story for Forspoken, without any side quests or anything of the like, clocks in at around 30 to 40 hours. It's like, oh, brilliant, action RPG with that much to offer. I finished the game in 13 hours, and I did do some side quests. I obviously didn't do them all because I thought to myself, oh, I've only got a limited time to play this game before I can post a review. Better get the story done and sort of like move forward if it's going to be that long. And when the credits rolled, I was like, oh, I've kind of finished it already. So while that doesn't mean that the game is sort of 15 hours, let's say, I did not comb through the whole of the open world experience to grab every morsel of side content there was, including like the different sort of nail patterns that you can get that augment your spells, the capes, the necklaces, or all of the different things that you can acquire to increase your stats. But like I said, at no point during the game did I feel like I had to go and do all of that stuff. I always wanted to go and find the fountains, which gave you additional movement abilities, because those are the kinds of things that I find tangible and really enjoyable and something new to play with, as opposed to the stats going up and things like that. But stat crunchers will enjoy going and finding all of the pieces and combing through to find every little morsel of what there is on offer. But I do think that the story could have been a bit longer for what I was expecting, or at least, you know, given that the expectation had been set from what I'd been shown and told already. And the story does that thing where, and a lot of games do this, I feel God of War Ragnarok did this, I feel Devil May Cry 5 does this, so this is not a slight on Forspoken, but games as a whole at the moment, where the first sort of boss that comes along is super important, gets loads of backstory, there's loads going on with the boss, and then the midsection kind of just feels like throwaway characters that are supposedly on the same level as that first character, before unloading a absolute mother load of information at the end, which could have been spread out a little bit more. Now, I do think that backloading the story seems to be this big trend in games these days, and having a lighter midsection where you're kind of just going through the motions. But despite all this, I've come to enjoy the stories for all of these games, like particularly God of War Ragnarok and the like, and Forspoken is no different. I came away from the Forspoken experience pretty satisfied with what I had played, even though it was a bit shorter than I had expected. So let's be real about it. Do I like Forspoken? Yeah, I would say I liked Forspoken. Do I think that it's as big a deal as perhaps it's touted to be? No, I would say that, like, I don't score video games when I do reviews for them, but my estimation for Forspoken is that it will sit at maybe like the high 70s, that kind of area. But I do also think that people are unfairly judging this game and sort of saying it's terrible, it doesn't work properly. And I don't believe that that's true. I don't think that it's fair to kind of judge a game based on a demo that really didn't showcase the game very well at all. And the game itself, I was satisfied by the time I had finished the game. Do I think it's going to win Game of the Year awards? No, probably not. But do I think that it's a very enjoyable game with a likable cast of characters and a story that might be a little bit cliche but was fun nonetheless? And did I enjoy sort of running around an open world, finding lots of little bits and pieces that were constantly upgrading my character? Yeah, I did. But from my own experience and from what I've played of it, I loved the music. I thought the visuals were stunning. I haven't gushed enough about how much I thought the visuals were fantastic, particularly the use of particle effects, and I'm very curious to see where the Luminous engine kind of progresses from here, because I do think there's a couple of kinks that need ironing out, but by and large, it's a very good engine, and I'd like to see what gets done with it. I think, yeah, like I said, characters were likable, the story was fun, the gameplay, while not perfect, was largely enjoyable, going through the various sort of dungeons that you find to kind of find extra bits. That was enjoyable. But I do also think that it did kind of rely on certain tropes that I wasn't too keen on. So Frey was cheapened a little bit by her swearing, and I know that that sounds like I'm being a prude. I'm absolutely not. I mean, trust me, I like DMC Devil May Cry. Like, I'm not a prude when it comes to this stuff. But equally, it's just kind of every 5 seconds you're just like, okay, calm down, it's a lot. And I do think that it's a little bad that we were told that the story was of a certain length, and I was surprised to finish it that much earlier. And I do think that the PC version could have done with some optimization to make it a bit more accessible for a wider range of players, because not everyone has a super powerful PC, and you know, even if you've got a pretty powerful one like me, it's still kind of not enough. And I do wonder if that's going to be the trend with a lot of games moving forward or not. So that's going to be it for my video review on Forspoken. Liked the game, didn't love the game, but thought it was pretty good. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Forspoken. Is it a game that you're excited to play? Is it a game that, like I said earlier, you've kind of already decided you're like, nah, I'm not interested, this isn't for me? Either way, definitely let me know in the comments below what you think of it. And if you'd like to continue the discussion on Forspoken or anything else, then definitely come and find me over on Discord or Twitch. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notification of any other videos I might be making. And that's going to be it from me today, beautiful. Thank you ever so much for coming, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye now.